Independent media parrots questionable Uyghur genocide claims by Patrick McFarlane. On January 19, 2021, during the Trump administration's twilight hours, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo formally accused the Chinese government of committing genocide against the Uyghur Muslims of the Xinjiang region of western China. The press statement alleged arbitrary imprisonment or other severe deprivation of physical liberty of more than 1 million civilians, forced sterilization, torture of a large number of those arbitrarily detained, forced labor, and the imposition of draconian restrictions on freedom of religion or belief, freedom of expression, and freedom of movement.
A Fox News alert now. The United States leveling perhaps the most serious charge a country can face, accusing China in the last hour and a bit of committing genocide and crimes against humanity in its repression of Uyghur Muslims. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo made the announcement just a short time ago. He joins us now for an exclusive interview. Mr. Secretary, good to have you with us. Let me just read, if I could, from your statement. You said, quote, "I have determined that the People's Republic of China, under the direction and control of the Chinese Communist Party, has committed genocide and crimes against the predominantly Muslim Uyghurs and other ethnic and religious minority groups."
This is forced labor, this is forced sterilizations, forced abortions, John, the kind of things that we haven't seen in an awfully long time in this world. And we now have conducted an exhaustive review of the facts and made the determination that, in fact, the Chinese Communist Party has committed these crimes against humanity, is continuing to try and deny these people, not just the Uyghur Muslims, but other faiths as well, the simple capacity to continue to exist and to create an ethnic set of activities that we haven't seen in an awfully long time. I've referred to this over time as the stain of the century. It is truly that. And today's actions is simply a continuation of the work this administration has done to try and convince the Chinese Communist Party to cease this terrible, terrible set of human rights violations that have been taking place.
The accusation was the climax of the Trump administration's evolving trade war against the Chinese people. For all of the Republican condemnation of Joe Biden's weak China policy, the Biden administration, led by neoliberal ghoul Antony Blinken, did not waste any time endorsing Mike Pompeo's accusation of genocide and has doubled down on targeted economic sanctions.
In your opening statement, you talked about the Chinese Communist Party, who continues to commit terrible human rights abuses. I want to talk about that. You have confirmed that you believe it is genocide, that the Uyghurs, a religious and ethnic minority in China, has experienced, as you know, brutal repression at the hands of the Chinese government. What do you plan to do with within the first 30 days to address what Joe Biden has described as a genocide committed by the Chinese government?
So on the Uyghurs, I think we're very much in agreement, and the forcing men, women, and children into concentration camps, trying to, in effect, re-educate them to be adherents to the ideology of the Chinese Communist Party. All of that speaks to an effort to commit genocide, and so I agree with that finding. I think we have to look at the tools that we have available to us, including some of the tools that the Congress has provided, to see what actions we can take. So, for example, I think we should be looking at making sure that we are not importing products that are made with forced labor from Xinjiang. That's one such thing. We need to make sure that we're also not exporting technologies and tools that could be used to further their repression. That's one place to start.
The evolution of diplomatic tension between the United States and China is the dark prophecy of a principle often attributed to Frederick Bastiat. Quote, "If goods do not cross borders, soldiers will." Indeed, the charge of genocide has been heralded writ large across the mainstream media, regurgitated by such truth-tellers as the New York Times, the BBC, The Guardian, CNN, The Independent, Reuters, and by a cast of other usual suspects. Those not accusing the Chinese government of genocide spew hawkish rhetoric at a fevered pitch unheard since perhaps the invasion of Iraq. Even sometimes anti-war voices in the mainstream, such as Tucker Carlson, Bill Maher, and John Oliver, have joined in the saber-rattling.
So last week in the Wall Street Journal, there was a kind of remarkable op-ed stating as clearly as anyone has ever stated the nature of the threat that we face from China. The op-ed was written by someone who would know, the Director of National Intelligence, John Ratcliffe. He called the Communist Party of China, quote, the greatest threat to democracy and freedom worldwide since World War II. It's an amazing piece, worth your time if you haven't read it. In just a moment, we'll have Director Ratcliffe on to discuss that. He wrote this, quote, the intelligence is clear. Beijing intends to dominate the United States and the rest of the planet economically, militarily, and technologically. I call its approach of economic espionage, rob, replicate, and replace. China robs U.S. companies of their intellectual property, replicates the technology, and then replaces the U.S. firms in the global marketplace.
We all know China does bad stuff. They break promises about Hong Kong autonomy, they put Uyghurs in camps and punish dissent, and we don't want to be that. But it's got to be something between authoritarian government that tells everyone what to do and a representative government that can't do anything at all. In 2 generations, China has built 500 entire cities from scratch, moved the majority of their huge population from poverty to the middle class, and mostly cornered the market in 5G and pharmaceuticals. Oh, and they bought Africa. Their new Silk Road initiative is the biggest infrastructure project in history, indebting not just that continent, but large parts of Asia, Europe, and the Middle East to the people who built their roads, bridges, and ports. If you want to go anywhere in the world these days, you better have a yen for travel.
There's an ethnic group in China being systematically surveilled and imprisoned in an attempt to essentially wipe their culture off the map. The people in question are the Uyghurs. They're a mostly Muslim ethnic minority in a region of China called Xinjiang, and the Chinese government has been treating them absolutely terribly.
A UN panel says the region resembles a massive internment camp, where more than 1 million Muslim minorities have been rounded up, detained, and forcibly indoctrinated by the Chinese regime. Witness accounts, satellite imagery, and Communist Party documents reveal what appears to be the largest imprisonment of people on the basis of religion since the Holocaust.